Welcome back, troglodytes, to the Trogly's Guitar Show. This freaky thing is known as the Gibson V2. Why does this guitar exist? Why do so many people hate it? We are going to discuss that and more in this episode. So to put things into perspective for you, the 70s wasn't the best time for Gibson financially, and into the 80s they thought, okay, well how about we take the Flying V and the Explorer and mess with the body design, see if we can create something new that is futuristic and cool. So in a time of cost savings, they created the third most expensive guitar in their lineup. These are actually sandwich-bodied guitars. It's a combination of maple and walnut. This finish is semi-what translucent. You can kind of see the walnut lines in the body. But if you take a look at a natural example, you can definitely see those extra additional wooden layers. These were 5-ply bodies that were either walnut, maple, walnut, maple, walnut, or maple, walnut, maple, walnut, maple. So you'll either have walnut on the front and back or maple, and the walnut ones were the most popular back in the day. There's the same variants on the neck. You either have a maple-dominated 5-piece neck or a Walmart-dominated 5-piece neck. And you will also see a brass nut. On top of the new body construction, they contoured the body with all of these different comfort cuts. Now these were made from 1979 through 1982. And the original design had what they considered boomerang pickups. To me, they look like upside down hearts. And I think the reason why these things just flopped massively is those giant pickups were single coils. They didn't sound like a Flying V at all. But in fact, they were humbucking single coil pickups designed by Tim Shaw. I had a very rare Bahama Blue version, and somebody scalloped the fretboard so bad that they had to put 2 steel rods in the back of the neck. But the single coil sounds from those instruments, they're just not what most people were looking for. So in 1982, to save their design and their butts, they decided to put humbucker pickups in here. Now the easiest way to find out if you have a converted boomerang pickup to a humbucker one is the original version actually has a cutout out of the fretboard right here in order to make room for the pickup. So if you have humbuckers in yours and you've got a missing chunk out of your fretboard, well now you know why. But the last year of production, they put stock Dirty Fingers pickups in here. They replaced the mother of pearl Gibson logo with a gold silkscreen and ditched the pick guard. The contouring for this body is designed to be slunk down like this and playing like this. Now normally I like my guitars to be about like this, so the contouring does nothing for me. But if you hold it down, that is when this little part makes sense because it rests against your body there. And then the other parts of it is just kind of for cosmetic looks. Now to me, these instruments, they kind of remind me of that horror movie Scream guy because they're just funkily shaped, and when they have those boomerang pickups, they're just freaky looking. So for all those reasons, the V2 was not well liked. These really still aren't that well liked on the used market. These are what I consider a dealer's/collector's guitar, because most players, they're not interested in these. But there's a lot of dealers who will buy these, jack them up to crazy prices, and sit on them for years and years and years. Now granted, these things were made in a bunch of really cool finishes. Some of the rare ones like Bahama Blue Sparkle, as well as like Gold Burst, those will bring a pretty penny because, you know, it's cool to have one of every single color. Now I'm not saying these guitars are bad, they're just kind of weird. Speaking on the used market, the E2 is way more popular. The contouring for this model wasn't quite as extreme, so perhaps that is why more people are accepting of the E2s over the V2. But let's go ahead and compare a V2 to the 2 other styles of Vs that were also here at this time. This is a 1979 Flying V. Before the 80s, this is essentially what a flying V would look like. It's kind of that 67 style. Now obviously they changed quite a bit from the original 50s design, but this is like the quintessential flying V in my eyes. If you have never played a 70s flying V that looks like this, these honestly are some of the best guitars Gibson ever made. The resonance in these things is just ridiculous. You strum these things and you feel it everywhere. But you can see you've got covered pickups, you got a big pick guard that covers the majority of the guitar. And then when you flip over to the V2, it's just so drastically different, you can hardly even consider these similar guitars at all, simply because this one doesn't have that pick guard. It has a significantly different bridge that's drilled into it. It looks like a string through design, but it is not. But as you can see, the bodies are very different here. Headstock wise, they do keep a similar looking truss rod cover, but these ones get the Gibson logo. This version of the Flying V followed after the V2, but let's compare it anyways. These things were adopted by thrash metal guys. They're alder bodies with mahogany necks with rosewood fretboards. But here again, you can kind of see the differences with the contouring of the body. I mean, these were a lot more expensive than these guys. But it's just kind of interesting to see the three differences to the Flying Vs of the era. Notice this one has a much more rounded headstock, whereas these were a lot pointier. So overall, there's not a lot of love for the V2. It's not a bad guitar. I mean, if you stand up and play, it's just as good as any other V, but that's kind of the thing. I think if you're going to pay a huge premium for one of these, you might as well just get the 67 styled V, because in my opinion it is a much better guitar, but it's hard to beat those all mahogany versions. So if you're a collector, I definitely suggest getting one with humbuckers and some of the rare colored V ones, or if you're a player that just wants something different. So now that we've learned a little bit about the Flying V2, let's go ahead and hear how it sounds. know how this instrument sounds, let's go ahead and review its condition. All right, face the headstock here. You can see you've got a little bit of rubbing right here, and so you can see through to that silver clear coat. And that's what this finish is. It's a candy apple red of some sorts. It's the version that's over silver, so it appears lighter in color as opposed to the over gold version. Your truss rod works fine. You have your stock brass nut yet. This one has had a jumbo refret. It's kind of hard to tell refrets when you don't have fret edge binding because that's always a dead giveaway when the nibs are missing. But the only way to tell this guy's been refretted, you can see the finish has been disturbed at the edges of the frets. Now, if those were just protruding frets, it would look a little bit different. It's mainly like on this side where you can see a little bit more finish chipping from the refret process. But you can also just tell these are way huge frets in comparison to what would have originally came on this instrument. So that means somebody played this thing, they loved it. I mean, you can see they actually played some of the finish off the neck as well on the treble side, but they liked it enough to refret it. Original Dirty Fingers pickups in here. The easiest way to tell that you have Dirty Fingers pickups without even pulling them out is look, you've got 2 adjustable rows of pull pieces. Usually on a pickup you'll just have one, and then these will be flat, but these ones you can adjust both sides. So these are hot ceramic pickups, great for screaming leads. Now the condition of this thing, I mean, it's not too bad. You've got some light nicks and dings. Strap buttons have been replaced though. Your knobs do appear to be original. Back of the headstock, serial number 80972035. You can see you've got some finish wear at the top of the headstock. So again, Gibson flip-out winding shawlers. These are great tuners, very reminiscent of a bygone era. You've got some finish checking, as is common with these metallic finishes along the tuners. You've got a ding at the back of the massive volute here. Being Kalamazoo made, usually these things are much larger than a regular Nashville styled one. But the neck itself is fairly thin. It's got some roundedness to it, but definitely still a 60s neck. A little bit of finish wear, as we had discussed earlier on this one. And now the back of the instrument, not necessarily chewed up by buckle worming, except for a little bit right here. But along the edges, kind of by the strap buttons, you can see where the finish has been rubbed down to that silver coat once again. But, you know, for the most part, this one's not in too bad of shape. Take a look on the edges. We've got some more dings along here. And this is a bad place to put your output jack because you cannot sit with these instruments. It's kind of like the modern Flying V. Unless you have a completely flat 90-degree jack, you're not going to be able to sit and plug this thing in. And that was the reason why this guitar was actually traded into me, is because somebody wanted to be able to sit to play their V. Now I'll do a blacklight test. Everything is looking good here on the face of the body. Knobs are glowing the way I would want to see as well. You can see some of those rubbed finish examples I was talking about earlier. It looks like you might have a little bit of stand rash there, but everything else is looking okay here. Back at the neck, again, you've got some rubbed finish areas from playing, as well as that refret process. Then the back of the headstock is also looking good, as is the face. This instrument comes in a non-original case. It's got some scratches and scuffs, but it works okay. You've got 2 locking latches on either side of the case, as well as 2 clasps. You also have a label on the case. The inside is blue. It kind of complements that red color. I'm not sure what this case was originally for, but it's fairly similar in style to what it would originally came with anyways. If you think you might be interested in being the next owner of this Gibson Flying V2, feel free to check out that link in the description. That will take you to the Reverb for sale ad. Thank you, Troglodytes, for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you tomorrow on the next episode. Take care.